justice.
One of the greatest people I knew.
He will be missed by me and multiple friends. His name with me will live on, and I'll make sure of it.
This is not fair to our families, that our children go to school and have to get killed.
We cannot lose another child in this country to violence in a school.
Right now at 11, a South Florida community comes together to grieve. Tonight, people in Parkland are mourning the loss of 17 people gunned down by that former student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Tonight, survivors are sharing stories of heroism as people they knew jumped into the line of gunfire to save others. Good evening. I'm Tiffany Kenny.
And I'm Felicia Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, investigators have identified all 17 victims. 9 people are still in the hospital, but now parents and friends of those who died are desperately looking for answers and asking for accountability. One parent even made an impassioned plea to President Donald Trump.
We have live team coverage tonight on the mass shooting. We begin with our co-anchor Todd McDermott, who is live in Parkland, where a vigil for the victims took place tonight. Todd?
Tiffany, Felicia, we're at Pine Trails Park, where you can still see behind me the depictions of 17 angels representing those 17 lives lost. 8 girls and young women, 9 boys and adult men, lives taken in an instant, in a 5-minute period, just a day ago at Stoneman Douglas High School. And tonight, thousands of people who loved them, loved the school, or both, came out to pray for them, to hold this candlelight vigil, and to hold tight to each other. I want you to take a look quickly at what's left of the vigil now. 17 crosses covered in candles, representing those 17 lives taken by one young man with a gun. Now to that young man, Nicholas Cruz, the man investigators now say has confessed to carrying out one of the deadliest mass shootings in modern U.S. history, the deadliest shooting ever in an American high school, remains in the Broward County Jail tonight. He'll be there for some time. The Broward County Sheriff released an updated timeline of what happened after the suspect took that Uber to the high school yesterday and walked in and opened fire on Stoneman Douglas High School in the hallways, killing those victims. The sheriff says Cruz went to a Subway inside the Walmart where many of the students had taken refuge after slipping away, looking like just another student, and getting away from the school in the aftermath of the gunfire. He ordered a drink at that Subway and the Walmart, and then went to a McDonald's and sat for a while. Police and deputies arrested him a very short time later near the school in the next town over. He was just a mile or two away from the school he once attended. Cruz now charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder. There is no bond set for him, nor will there be. His court-appointed attorney calls him a broken child. I mentioned the thousands of people who gathered here in the park tonight. There was a feeling of gratefulness to be together. There was sorrow, there was pain, and there was also some hope, but they have such a long way to go. Ari Height joins me now tonight. He was at the vigil as well, and he's here tonight in Parkland. Ari?
Todd, you mentioned those crosses that are in this field. Well, we're going to widen out the shot so you can see all 17 crosses in this field where the vigil was held this evening. You can see in the distance some people still here gathered around some of the crosses. Show you some more of this one that's right next to me here. Some candles decorating it, stuffed animals, flowers, and a note on it saying, "Please rest in peace in heaven, R.I.P. Helena." Helena is one of the victims, as Todd mentioned. A very emotional evening here in Parkland.
I don't know what I do next. My wife is home. We are broken.
Fred Guttenberg stood in front of thousands of people and talked about his daughter, Jamie.
She was supposed to be safe. My job is to protect my children. And I send my kid to school.
Jamie Guttenberg was only 14 years old, one of 17 people killed during the shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School on Wednesday.
And I don't always get to say, I love you. I don't remember if I said that to Jamie yesterday morning.
Thursday night, the community packed into the Parkland Amphitheater for a candlelight vigil to remember the victims.
Luke Oyer. Elena Petty.
The class president read all 17 names.
Peter Wayne. Nicholas Dort.
She then asked the crowd to place their hands over their hearts.
And feel that spark. Feel that spark that still burns inside. And together in our community, we create a flame.
Makes no sense. This is impossible. My girl, my 14-year-old baby. And for those of you who know my Jamie, she was the life of the party. She was the energy in the room.
As the vigil came to a close, everybody in the crowd lifted their candle toward the sky to show the world there is still light in Parkland.
Parents, love your kids, hold your kids, kiss your kids, and don't ever, ever miss the chance to tell them how much you love them.
And that is just wonderful advice. One more thing I want to mention tonight. As people left this vigil, they were asked to jot down on a Post-it note and then put on this board right here how they were going to make the community better. I shot some photos of that. One of these says, try to talk to someone who is lonely and needs a smile. This one says, I will defend the weak. And that one says, I will make sure all my classmates feel validated. Like I mentioned before, Todd, a very emotional evening here in Parkland. Back to you.
And Ari, I will never forget the sight of all those candles being held aloft near the end of this vigil. Thanks so much for that, Ari. Ari Height here in Parkland with me at Pine Trails Park. Tonight, you're also going to hear from a student who survived that attack. Her name is Alexis Gendron. She was in the school at the time of the shooting, and she actually saw bullets shatter the glass of the classroom door.
I'm in shock still. I'm an emotional wreck. I just don't know how to take this. And I'm thankful to be here, but at the same time, I'm so hurt to know that a lot of people I know are gone. I kind of froze for a second, and I grabbed the girl next to me, and I said, just stay low, don't move. And I was scared that I was going to be next. I didn't know what else to do. I just kind of froze.
I don't know about you, but I like her cold. Absolutely.
That pain that you hear in her voice is something that so many of these students will still have to deal with. Tonight was a chance to be together, to pray together, and just, I saw some smiles, but the fact is there is a long road ahead for all these children and their families here in the town of Parkland. In a few minutes, I'm going to introduce you to the police officer from another town who saw a teenager walking down the street after the shooting, who turned out to be Nicholas Cruz, and quickly arrested him. For now, I'm Todd McDermott in Parkland at Pine Trails Park. Tiffany, back to you.
All right, Todd, thank you. Just so much heartache there tonight. And as Todd mentioned, this afternoon, the Broward County Sheriff's Office released an updated timeline of everything that happened yesterday. Investigators say an Uber driver dropped off Cruz at Douglas High School at 2:19 yesterday afternoon. Cruz was carrying a black duffel bag and a black backpack where he hid loaded magazines. Once inside the school, investigators say he pulled a fire alarm to get students and staff into the hallways. And that's when he pulled out an AR-15 rifle and opened fire into 5 classrooms. He then ran to the 3rd floor stairwell, dropped his rifle, the vest, and ammunition. Deputies say Cruz then raced out of the school, blending in with students who were trying to escape, and then walked to a Walmart and bought a drink at the Subway inside that store. About 10 minutes later, he also stopped at a McDonald's where he sat down for a short time. A Coral Springs police officer spotted Cruz and arrested him without incident around 3:40, more than an hour after firing those fatal gunshots.
Today, a Broward County judge denied bond for Nicholas Cruz. The suspect walked into court wearing an orange jumpsuit. An arrest report shows he confessed to the massacre. Investigators say he has been cooperating and answering their questions. One of his public defenders told reporters her client seems like a child and is deeply troubled.
He's a broken human being. He's a broken child. It's just the sadness that this community is feeling. I mean, my children they go to school in this community. I feel horrible for these families, and Mr. Cruz feels that pain.
Cruz is charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder. We've also just learned he has a long history with police. Officers were called to his home in Parkland 39 times between 2011 to 2016. The calls ranged from domestic disturbances to child abuse. Tonight, the Broward County Sheriff confirms the suspect bought the assault rifle used to carry out the attack at a gun store in Coral Springs, about 3 miles away from the high school. Today, federal agents were spotted inside Sunrise Tactical Supply along with the store owner. Angela Rozier reports from Coral Springs.
We now know that AR-15 was purchased here at this Coral Springs gun store. The owners, the Morrison family, not only shocked, but closed the business. ATF agents showed up at the Sunrise Tactical Supply gun business at around 12:30 Thursday afternoon. According to the attorney representing the owners, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz purchased the weapon February 11, 2018. He says the paperwork was in order and all the appropriate procedures were followed and the background was in compliance. And on February 18, 2018, Cruz returned to the store and picked up his weapon.
To be clear, there was absolutely nothing to give the Morrisons any belief that Mr. Cruz was going to do anything with this weapon.
What was their reaction when they learned that the two were related?
Shocked, mortified. They're members of this community. They participate in this community. They are good people. They can't believe that anything like this happened.
He says the owners condemn in the strongest fashion anyone who would use any weapon in anger or violence, but they are also concerned for their own safety.
They do have fears that this community will turn on them because of what happened as a result of these horrible and cowardly acts of Mr. Cruz.
And the attorney says out of respect for those affected by this tragedy, Sunrise Tactical will remain closed until further notice. In Coral Springs, Angela Rozier, WPBF 25 News.
President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands.
A mother whose 14-year-old daughter died in the mass shooting is calling for change. Her passionate message to President Donald Trump.
And warning signs that may have slipped through the cracks. What a man showed the FBI months before yesterday's deadly attack.
And tonight, we remember the 17 innocent lives lost at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The victims include students, an assistant football coach, and the school athletic director. We have much more on the mass shooting in Parkland. You're watching WPBF 25 News.
We are here live in Parkland at a public park just about 2 miles away from Stoneman Douglas High School. Second night after those terrifying 5 minutes when 17 lives were taken. I'm looking out and there are still people walking around some 5 hours after that vigil began. It was a long evening for all these people. There are still people walking among the candlelit crosses as I stand here right now in the park. Police arrested Nicholas Cruz a little more than an hour, as I said earlier, after the shooting, and he made those 2 stops you've heard about tonight. Right now, you're going to hear from the Coconut Creek police officer who spotted a teenager walking along the road and recognized him as Nicholas Cruz and took him into custody. Ted White has that story.
By all accounts, it has been a very long day for investigators and police who have been inside and outside Stoneman Douglas High School. We heard from the police officer who was the first to see the 19-year-old shooter after he left campus. This is Officer Michael Leonard. He is with Coconut Creek Police Department. After the shooting at the school, he responded to the area and decided to expand his search for the gunman. Dispatchers gave him a description of the suspect. Officer Leonard saw someone walking in a neighborhood fitting that description.
He looked like a typical high school student, and for a quick moment, I thought, could this be the person? Is this who I need to stop?
Officer Leonard says he trusted his instincts, and the person we now know as Nicholas Cruz complied with his commands and was taken into custody. Cruz was checked out at the hospital, then was taken to the Broward County Jail. In Parkland, Ted White, WPBF 25 News.
Our thanks to Ted for that. These mass shootings come one after the other in this country. Remember that the Sutherland Springs, Texas church shooter was on the FBI's radar. We now know that Omar Mateen, the Pulse nightclub shooter, was on the FBI's radar. And now we know the FBI might have had Nicholas Cruz on the radar as well before the mass shootings at the high school yesterday, but they could not positively identify him. Here's why. It was an internet posting. Someone with the exact same name and spelling as Nicholas Cruz posted a comment on YouTube saying, quote, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." The FBI immediately received 2 reports about the comment, including one from a blogger named Ben Benight, who is a bail bondsman in Mississippi. Benight said he immediately took a screenshot and contacted YouTube and the FBI.
I had a field agent contact me and meet me at my office the very next morning. He took down the information and I hope initiated an investigation.
Again, that investigation did not lead anywhere. The FBI said they conducted reviews of YouTube's users and policies. They could not identify the person who made the post, but it is chillingly reminiscent of the kinds of things that some students say Nicholas Cruz said while he was a student for that year at the high school that I said is just 2 miles away. And as I look out on the field tonight at these candlelit crosses, I can't help but wonder what the students will be feeling when they go back into the high school at Stoneman Douglas sometime perhaps next week and walk those hallways and get into those classrooms and remember their classmates and the adults they were so fond of who were lost yesterday. Tiffany, Felicia, back to you.
Something we know that they have to do to get back to school and get back into those buildings, but at this point it just seems impossible to be able to do that.
It's so hard to comprehend having to go through that. Well, if you know anything about the school shooting in Parkland, the FBI wants to hear from you.
Take a look at your screen. This is the FBI tip line. It is 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-225-5324.
And if you have any photos or videos from the shooting, you're asked to send those to the FBI. The Bureau set up a special website where you can upload whatever you have. The site is on your screen. It's fbi.gov/Parkland shooting.
And parents who lost their children in yesterday's mass shooting are calling on President Donald Trump and lawmakers to take action and re-examine gun laws in the U.S.
President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands. Put metal detectors at every entrance to the schools. What can you do?
Lori Ahaldef's daughter, Alyssa, was one of the 17 victims shot and killed at Douglas High School yesterday.
I want to speak now directly to America's children, especially those who feel lost, alone, confused, or even scared. I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be.
The president is calling on Americans to talk about their fears and spread love. The president also assured parents that he is working with the federal government and local authorities to make schools safer, but did not specifically mention anything about gun control. President Trump says he is making plans to visit Parkland, but has not announced a specific date. The president is scheduled to spend the weekend at his Mar-a-Lago estate on Palm Beach, but has not said if he plans to travel to Parkland this weekend.
Tonight, some lawmakers are calling for stricter gun control laws in the U.S. Florida Democratic Senator Bill Nelson addressed the Senate this morning, saying enough is enough, and now is the time to act.
But despite these horrific events that are occurring over and over, these tragedies have led so many of us to come right here to this floor and to beg our colleagues to take common sense actions that we all know will help protect our children and our fellow citizens from these kind of tragedies. And we get nowhere.
Meanwhile, other lawmakers, including Republican Florida Senator Marco Rubio, agreed changes need to be made, but did not specifically mention gun control.
I think it is a legitimate thing to say that even as we mourn, we have an obligation to ask ourselves, is there something we could have done or should do to ensure that we don't see these things happening?
Senator Rubio says gun restrictions would not have prevented the mass shooting in Parkland. Senator Nelson and Senator Rubio are expected to be in Parkland tomorrow to meet with investigators.
There's still so many that are suffering, which just breaks my heart because this is where I live. This is my home.
And tonight, survivors of the mass shooting are sharing their stories. Thousands of students ran for cover when the gunman opened fire on 5 classrooms.
Many students saw their friends and teachers rush in to save others while putting their own lives in danger.
They survived the scariest moment of their lives.
It's really scary being out in the hallway knowing there's someone with a gun trying to kill everyone he can right next to you. He can come up the stairs any moment.
They're thankful, but can't help but think of those who didn't make it out.
There's still so many that are suffering, which just breaks my heart because this is where I live. This is my home.
Or those who some say had to hide near dead bodies to survive.
I don't know what I would have done if I was in that room, because even just seeing the video, it made me, I wanted to throw up. I was crying. It was really upsetting.
Now students are having to cope with the loss and trauma. One of the victims, friends identified as Nick Dorwett, the captain of the swim and dive team.
He just signed with an amazing school for swimming. He's not going to get to honor that scholarship anymore. It's hard, and I can't imagine what his family's going through right now. If that was my brother, I don't know what I would do.
All they can do now is show their love and support as they have been. This fence near the school collecting flowers throughout the day, these crosses representing the lives lost, while many who returned to the scene have shown strength. This young woman broke down, an officer consoling her.
And now to live local late-breaking news. 2 local students have been arrested in school-related incidents. On the Treasure Coast, the Martin County Sheriff's Office confirms for us the arrest of a student accused of simulating a shooting at Anderson Middle School today. Deputies say he simulated shooting up the class with his fingers while making sound effects. Police accuse Palm Beach Lakes High School student of taking 2 guns to school today. Officers say he actually ran from campus. They eventually arrested him. No one was hurt. Our coverage on the mass shooting in Parkland continues on air and online. Tonight, we remember the victims gunned down at Douglas High School. You're watching WPBF 25 News.
And our warm weather pattern continuing again today. Tomorrow, more of the same, and that trend continues all the way through the big holiday weekend. Temps today above average, high of 81, the morning low 64, a little bit closer to where we should be for this time of year, but still above the norm. Right now, current temperatures have cooled a bit. 66 in Jupiter and 70 in Boca, 62 right now in Port St. Lucie. All of this under mostly clear skies. You can see the satellite view is looking really good. There are a few clouds to our north and east, but once again tonight it's this guy, big area of high pressure continuing to dominate the weather, not only giving us light winds and warm temperatures, but blocking any cold front from coming anywhere near South Florida. So tonight temperatures will be comfortable, upper 50s for the Treasure Coast, mid 60s for the Palm Beaches, and mid 50s around Lake Okeechobee. Then tomorrow, another warm day, 84 in Delray, 82 in Stewart, 82 in Okeechobee, and the forecast high in Vero Beach about 81 degrees. That trend continues, as I mentioned before, all the way through the holiday weekend and into next week. And in fact, the indications are now that this will continue all the way through the end of the month. All right, tonight, looking good, clear, comfy. Overnight lows in the mid-60s, 50s for the Treasure Coast. Tomorrow, another great day. Sunny, warm temperatures tomorrow in the low range of the 80s, about 83 degrees. The boating forecast looking really good. Seas 2 to 3 feet. And by the way, the boating forecast improves even more this weekend. Inland waters a light chop winds, southeast 5 to 10. And your first alert, 7-day forecast. South Florida's most accurate all the way through the holiday weekend. Temperatures in the low 80s, overnight lows in the 60s. Again, under mostly sunny skies. Next chance of rain, and it's not much, comes our way on Tuesday and Wednesday. And once again, no cold front in sight. And that's your weather.